Yeah.
I'm going to recap the previous week. I'm going to recap with a little poster on behind me every from now on. So I'm going to see how entertaining I can get.
Well,
Right.
if you're just joining us, this is the SKTLs weekly volunteer call, cryptocurrency call. And we've got the regular crew here. Joe Anderson, aka American Badass. Dan Gerasi, CEO, President, Free Fall Aerospace, and Sanatsi, who also is
Thank
a
you.
technologist, future
Badass.
Retired.
A retired badass. Yeah.
Retired. I like that. That's a good one.
Yes.
Well, cool.
Just out of curiosity, I pasted a link just before I joined. There's a graph of the number of satellites in space. Like I was like, okay, is there a graph for this? And there is. Bryce,
Yeah, let me try it. You want to share it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll pull it up.
Like 1957.
Yeah.
0, I believe, in 1957, and then like 2
Right,
next
because
year.
that was 57 was Sputnik. That's my birth year.
So I know you would definitely shed light, some light on this graph, and I think it's a useful one.
Well, that's not helpful.
Well, there's a report that's out. If you go to Slingshot Aerospace's site.
Actually, if you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if you go to their site, there's a report that doesn't cost anything. But this is an excellent report because it goes into all the detail of launches, who has what and in which orbit, geosats versus MEO versus LEO, launch cadence, everything that you want to know about satellites. But and as I say, it's not a paid report, which is nice for once.
How do we find that, Dan?
Slingshot Aerospace. That's the site. Let me
Slingshot
see.
Aero.
Let me see if I can get.
I tried to. I couldn't pay for that. I couldn't figure out how to show the free version.
Let's see. Well, maybe it was when I.
What was the problem with the link I sent you? Because I can see the graph without.
I know, and the one graph I have is really small on my.
Oh, if you just move the cursor on. Oh, okay. Are you on a Mac? So you might want to, let's see. You might want
to. PC.
Okay.
I don't know why, and it doesn't give me the chat. Here we go.
Yeah, so it's under slingshot.
See it now?
Space.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, if you move the cursor, like starting from the left on any dot, it'll pop. Basically, the number will pop up.
Right.
So just put your cursor on the blue dot.
Well, it won't. This is just a picture.
I got you.
Like if I go to the website.
Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't the website? I sent you. Wait a second.
Well, when I go to the website, it's like it wants me to pay for it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sanachi's a VIP, apparently.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Now, if I can share mine, I'll show you where this stuff is.
All right. Let's try this. I will stop. For a tech crypto space call, I feel pretty technologically inadequate right now.
So this.
Here we go.
Okay, so Slingshot Aerospace, it's slingshot.space, but there's under their solutions, there's a bunch of stuff on data, and so you go to their data and insights page, and this is pretty much all kinds of stuff that you'd want to see, launch data, and then they'll take you into more detail. The one that I'm talking about is the state of satellite. So anyway, this is a good place if you want to learn anything about it. I also put a link in the chat for there it is. So this is what you can go in and grab this report. You can download it. But this will tell you a lot of what's going on in orbit. And I put a link in there for an article from Space News today as well. I'll stop sharing this. For
13,000
yeah,
satellites in orbit.
yeah, total
13?
and they're saying spacecraft, total spacecraft, which is interesting, not just satellites. So
It was
there's other stuff up
13,000. Is
there.
that what you said, Joe?
Yeah, 12,600.
And Starlink is 5 or 6,000 of that, right?
Yeah, they're
Cool.
getting there. Yeah, they're getting
yeah,
there.
oh, more than 5.
Yeah, but
That's
they're
crazy.
going up at a rate of.
I never would have guessed Starlink was like almost over a third.
Well, yeah, but it's it's mosquitoes versus elephants too. I mean,
Yeah.
they're throwing up a bunch of small stuff. I think when you start diving into all the different plans for constellations and launch, you find out that there's a lot. I mean, we're running at about a 3,000 plus pace per year right now. And that's only going to increase. There are estimates that 70,000 satellites are going up in the next 6 or 7 years. Which when you look at Starlink, they may be early, but you've got a whole bunch of others coming with constellations, and we're going to see what happens with Kuiper. We're going to see what happens with all these others. You have all these big satcoms, like the ones we deal with, that are all planning massive constellations. And now people are pushing out to middle Earth orbit, because they're saying, gee, the latency isn't that much more, but there's a lot more room. We can do a lot more out there. So you're going to start seeing, it's the old analogy we used to use for the solar system. It's like, and for those of you who don't remember, I apologize, you can Google this, but an LP, a vinyl record that had all of the grooves, concentric grooves. That's kind of the solar system, right? It's just all these concentric orbits going out. And what we're trying to do now is move to higher and higher orbits, or orbits where there isn't as much stuff. At the same time, small satellites are being designed to go all the way out to geostationary orbits. So it's going to get more crowded. It's going to continue to get more crowded, and the progress isn't there at the speed we'd like for removing a lot of the stuff. The business case still hasn't been made for debris removal. And I was at a conference on Friday speaking here in Tucson, but talking to people on the break, and everybody's saying the same thing. Debris comes up from the audience. What are we going to do about this? It's not going to be a government operation.
And I assume that no matter what happens and how many satellites get put up there, there's lanes that have been dedicated to never have satellites in there. So we always have a way off if we need to go,
there's government restricted orbits. There's all kinds of stuff where we know that there's nothing in the way, or at least none of our own stuff in those orbits. We can't
Dan, when a rocket leaves and if you're going to go outside of like Leo, you're heading to Geo or whatever. Yeah. And I mean, you're not flying perpendicular to the surface of the Earth, right? You're flying at an arc, right? Somewhat.
Yeah, you gotta spin out, and you've got to get enough delta V. You need enough velocity to break each orbit and move up to the next. And so that's why it's so much more expensive, and it costs so much more fuel, and it's a much bigger lift than going to Leo. That's why everybody goes to Leo. It's easy.
Yeah.
Geo is the hardest.
Is everything orbiting the Earth in the same direction?
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Yeah, follows rotation.
Okay.
I believe everything is. It should be. I'm trying to think of why it wouldn't be, but I guess you could do both. But you have the gravitational centrifugal force of the Earth, spinning at, what is it, 1,100 miles an hour at the equator is the speed of rotation. So if you're going west to east and you're following everything, you're following the planet, which is why it makes sense to follow the rotation of the Earth anyway. But
is there ever going to be a legitimacy to the launching centrifugally from the ground and shooting up? Has it ever been determined that will work, or is
spin
that
launch, like spin launch? The
Yeah.
companies, yeah. Well, I mean, they've thrown some stuff up there, but it's
Are they still in business? Spin launch?
You're asking me the question. Now I'm going to say I don't know. I thought they were.
I'm going to Google
maybe,
that.
Yeah,
I'm going to see.
Because it was a great idea when we had very expensive alternatives to launch. Now, when you have this lower cost launch capability and prices coming down, suddenly they have to find a different market niche. And now it's, well, we could do stuff quickly, small stuff, cheap, blah, 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 blah. But even then, I don't know what the insurance is going to cost or what it does cost, but that's probably got to be one of their biggest expenses. It's liability.
Looks like they're still around, Dan. They just replaced their CEO in May. So
yeah,
they're still around, looks like.
Well, the people who founded the company are all construction guys. That's where they came out of. They didn't come out of, space someplace. They came out of construction because they sat around, and I remember speaking with them a few years ago when they first started up at the symposium and over beers, and they could definitely drink beer, that's for sure. And I had trouble keeping up, but it was this whole notion of how they came up with this idea, and that what it requires is a major construction project to build this launcher, and that's what they did, and that's where they brought their skills to the table. So it's your basic brute force machine, but I just don't think it's practical because they need so much land. Spin Launch is the name of the company for the question that was asked. Spin Launch. But I asked them, so how many of these would you build? These are massive. They're hundreds of acres. And they said, oh, no, just one. So, as an investor, you look at that and you say, okay, well, is it scalable? How many launches can they do a day? I mean, what can they possibly charge per kilo? So I think there's limited upside, but it's also logistically something that you can't just put someplace.
If the rocket business doesn't work out, is there any opportunity as like an amusement, like a Disneyland type thing?
Yeah, it's a good way to send people to space. Yeah,
it almost seems to me like that would be harder on cargo than just a straight vertical launch would be. I mean, pushing all that to the outside and then going vertical. There's just a lot more.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about, pretty significant G-forces being generated, and, not in a vertical, but to your point, there's this centrifugal force that's sending it. And so the types of payloads are not limited, but there's certain things you're not going to put on there. But there's a lot that you could pack in cargo. I mean, everything that goes up is packed for, the vibration testing to make sure you're okay to survive a launch is pretty nasty. So anything that passes testing should be okay. But, we're not going to send up fine China to the space station with that thing, I'm sure.
Right. I mean, it just seems to me like high-tech electronics would be a harder deal. I mean, with...
If they're solid state, everything is locked down, everything's... I tell you what, the electronics, how fragile this stuff is. I mean, I look at the stuff we're making, the boards and all the stuff, and it's like, if it can withstand that kind of testing, it's amazingly robust.
Are there chips that you guys buy from major chip companies that are like space specific chips that are high radiation resistant, or?
Well, there are hardened,
Yeah.
things that you can buy for sure, but most of what we're building now is for the ground.
Oh, yeah.
So, but the chips are the same. I mean, it's what do you need them to drive? So, yeah, are they in a radiation hardened, a rad hardened environment? Are they protected? Typically, they are. They're in some box, whether it's metal or whatever, aluminum, and that's a decent protector. But there's a lot more development now on new ways to protect from radiation. So I think we'll see all those coming into play in the next couple of years. But the chips are the chips. It's just where do you get them from? And the problem we've got is the cost is so high again. Even here in Arizona with a big chip operation, it's just the world market is still not caught up.
Which companies are making those chips?
Oh, pick your favorite chip company.
Qualcomm,
It's a matter.
or?
Yeah, I mean, it's a matter of what the application is, and it's the classic. Okay, let's go shopping. Who's got the right chip, and at what cost?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like PC boards or PCBs, where you can get one made in the United States for $1,200, or you can get the exact same thing from China for $150. This is the problem we have in the country. And Friday in Tucson, we had the aerospace and defense manufacturing conference. Big conference. They had 300 people in Tucson on a 110-degree day. It was amazing. And we went through all these issues around manufacturing. And, the cost of manufacturing is so prohibitive here at home. How do we onshore manufacturing for space? Because that's a big risk to our supply chain. And it's getting a lot of attention. It's not solved. It's like engineering.
Yeah.
Engineering labor rates in the United States are double what they are in Europe. And
I was gonna say, is it mostly labor, or is it just the
labor? It's
initial
labor.
dollars to put up the factories? I mean,
It's labor. I mean, we're looking at, some of our stuff is being built in India because the Indian government requires that it be built there if it's going to be deployed there. So that's fine. All for that. And yet, what are their labor rates? I mean, $1 an hour, $2 an hour. I mean, it's crazy, but that's where they want it made. They're trying to build their economy and get more workers getting paid more. And that's why they're demanding things be made there.
You can be efficient. You can just produce just incredible volumes. At some point, the labor cost goes down.
Yeah.
So if you can build a factory that you can knock them out fast enough, then the labor isn't as big of an issue. But it's just.
But it's getting to that volume.
Yeah, you got to get there.
And because we talk to a manufacturer and they say, well, that's great. What's the number? Because I'm not going to even pay attention to you or take your call unless it's a big enough number to make it worth my while. And so for smaller companies, you're having to go find manufacturers who are smaller who will be willing to make 5 or 10 or 50 or something and don't need 1,000 to get their attention. And that's where you run up against massive costs because the smaller manufacturers don't have the leverage. They don't have the volume throughput. They're still amortizing every piece of equipment in the building.
Yeah.
So there is no solution at the small end of the marketplace. And frankly, for us, there's a point in time where I'm now sitting here thinking, I may have to manufacture certain things because I'm not going to be able to get them anywhere at a cost that's going to help me. They're going to kill the margin. And, and it's not electronics components. It's like, the reflector, the dish, or, that stuff. That's the stuff where you run up against the wall. So
I was just going to add to your comment, Dan, that I don't know if you all saw the news today, but the chip problems could be getting worse, not better, because there's geopolitical tensions on the rise. And so both Trump said that Taiwan should have to pay us to defend their island. And then Biden is rumored to be contemplating a ban on any American product being sold to the Chinese chip makers. And so any products from ASML or Lam Research or anything that's got any one piece of American made product can't go to Chinese chip makers. And so it took the semiconductor index down 7% today. That and then ASML, which is they make the high NA lithography equipment that builds the chips. They reported soft guidance, and so, anyways, there's a triple whammy for chips, and it just crushed the chip market or the semiconductor index, and then took the whole market down with it. So,
and
Bye.
we're gonna and we're gonna get whiplash from the reaction. I'll tell you anything you want to hear political climate we're going to be in until November of, I'll promise you the world. And, it's like, oh, okay, we're hard on China now. Where was that? In the past? We were hard on China, 7 years ago. So there's going to be some issues. And as a market person, put your helmet on because it's going to be nasty. For the next few months. But I think when it becomes clear, the market had a nice day yesterday. So, here we go.
It's all relative,
It's a trader's market. Gee, what a surprise. So I think that, once we can start onshoring more and more, I think markets are going to be happy. They're reacting to the dependency on export right now for so much revenue that I'd like to see more stuff built here, but we have to solve the cost problem.
Optimus robots from Tesla will help.
Well, you got the Texas Space Commission now just is in full throated movement today. They have a meeting today. They're about to start selecting projects. They're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars being deployed across Texas, especially West Texas near Midland, where they want to build a lot of infrastructure,
for space infrastructure, factories and component factories
deep space communications. Texas is out to make itself the uncontested leader in the world as a space resources and support location. And they've got billions of dollars at the state level that's behind this. There's $350 million on the table now. And you're going to see a lot of movement. Elon knows it. I mean, it's no surprise that he's completely going to take every last screw and wrench out of California and move it. But there was a hysterical post on LinkedIn today, by the way, from a space company called Conkers, Conkers. They made a big announcement that they're leaving California because of how bad it is, and they're moving to Pyongyang, North Korea. So if you want to have a good laugh, go on LinkedIn and find that post because it's hysterical. They're talking about the great labor rates there and everything else, just unlimited labor. But I mean, there's a lot of movement happening right now, and Texas and Florida have said we're going to war with the rest of the country to attract space industry. And so Colorado's in it. Everybody's in it. I mean, Arizona's standing up at Space Commission now. But Texas is the 900-pound gorilla that's going to dictate. And good, because the rest of the country needs to engage in this economy the way that.
To be fair, Dan, New Mexico made that bet 15 years ago with the spaceport. We just we bridled ourselves to the wrong horse in that one with Virgin Galactic.
Well, wrong horse. And I think the follow-on plan that New Mexico needs is massive. Okay, it's not a build it and they will come. And I think management at the spaceport there is, has not been as aggressive. There should be they put all that development legislation in place, but there should be a corridor going out to that spaceport that's lined with every space company and federal space player there is, and really build the road to space, as I've called it for a few years, to really say, hey, build the economic environment around the spaceport. There's nothing.
Right. Nothing.
And it's like, okay, let's go take a 2-hour drive and stare at nothing to go to the spaceport and stare at nothing. So there's a lot that New Mexico needs to do. New Mexico's in a tough spot because it's in between Arizona and Texas, and the state of New Mexico is too dependent and therefore takes it for granted that DOD has such a big presence in the state.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, oh, well, that we can check the box on space stuff. They're already here. They've been here forever with the labs. There's no commercial space economy. That's
No.
the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And they look at that and they say, well, gee, Arizona's right next door. Look at Phoenix. Oh my God, there's more space stuff going on there than almost anywhere. Or they look at Texas. And New Mexico needs to punch above its weight class right now because it's tough. It is really tough. And it's all about incentives. I think I told you before when I was at Space Symposium conference, I was at the Arizona table. Guy walks up and says, hey, what are the incentives for Arizona? I said, well, you're talking to the wrong guy. Commerce Authority's over here. He says, well, I'm shopping. I'm a California company and we're leaving. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm getting out of California and this is going to be an arbitrage trade. I'm going to talk to everybody and see who can do the best deal for my company. And he left us. He went across to Huntsville, Alabama, which was across the aisle. He went around to the next aisle to Albuquerque. This is the environment we're in right now.
I mean,
Yeah.
do Texas and Florida have big advantages simply because those are the massive launch sites, right? You want to be close to launch, I would think. But
Their advantages are no state income tax, lower corporate tax, big land grants to build facilities, tax incentives for companies, hire X number of people, will give you a tax-free environment or will dramatically reduce taxes, lots of investment capital that comes to the table. They've got their act together. And Florida's been at it a lot longer than Texas because of Space Florida, which has been around forever. And that's the big consortium trade group for all the companies in Florida. I think there's, I don't know, more than 15,000 aerospace companies in the state of Florida. Actually, it's ridiculous. And then Texas, because of the Johnson Space Center. But now they're saying we're spreading it around the state. So Austin with the U of T is a big hub. And they're doing a lot of space technology work. A lot of companies are leaving San Francisco and going to Austin. And then you have West Texas. You have Boca Chica down south at the tip with Blue and of course SpaceX and everybody else. Midland, you've got all this going on now with a horizontal spaceport, but they want to put a big facility out there. So we're trying to get involved in that. Frankly, we're in the middle of that right now. But
if you thought there's nothing in heading to the spaceport, there's really nothing around Midland.
No. Oh, no. I mean, I lived in Texas 100 years ago, and I've lived there a couple times, and I used to travel the state and the region a lot for what I was doing. And you go to Midland, Odessa, and it's like you're on an island, and then you're going to go someplace else. Having said that, it's oil country. There's a lot of money out there.
There's way more money there, no doubt.
Oh, and so, and they're looking for a new, identity. They're looking for a new identity. And it's like, wow, space sounds like a pretty good one for the next few thousand years. So, better switch.
Yeah. Well, we have some questions here about some crypto stuff. And No Word says, is anybody buying more SKTLs? Says he is. So where are you guys at on SKTLs, crypto in general? We're missing our crypto experts, Cabana and Cody. But
the crypto cabana is not here.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, I can tell you that we're pretty much steady. The only cryptos we own are Bitcoin and SKTLs, and so we're not necessarily buying more right at this moment because Cody can tell you. I've heard the thesis enough. I can tell you that there's a crypto washout coming, and he expects that this 90% of their silly frauds and scams are going to crash. I'm not making fun of him, but he says it a lot, so that's why I'm being a little facetious. But anyways, no, there is we do think that there's a big correction that's bound to happen with crypto. So we're not aggressively buying really any cryptos right now, but holding steady, I would say.
Do you think the correction's independent of everything else, or do you think it's related to any other market volatility.
I think it's all a little bit related now because used to crypto would do kind of its own thing, but especially now that we have the Bitcoin ETFs and maybe the Ethereum ETFs on the way, it's just it's been commercialized, it's institutionalized now. It's
Right.
The percentage of people that own crypto is much higher than it used to be, so it's not as fringe as it was 5-6 years ago or even 2 years ago. And so I
As they
think
say,
there's a lot of interrelatedness now with the regular markets and crypto.
yeah, as it's said in the wealth management industry now, crypto has gone retail.
Right.
So, now, Joe and Jane Sixpack can buy some crypto in an ETF or do whatever. And I think that dilutionary effect of, having far better distribution, which is the role of the market, right, is to ensure thorough distribution of securities. Then that adds a little stability. It still doesn't change the fact that just as in equities, there are people who can whipsaw the market anyway, but we'll have to see. Not miss that question.
I don't have a view on JD Vance. I don't know very much about him, and I never, I had heard of him, but didn't know much about him before this weekend. But there is this, there is a pro-Trump trade happening right now, and maybe crypto is part of that.
They're both talking very highly, but they want to secure the crypto audience, so they're talking about it a lot.
And he's pretty knowledgeable about it, and I know a fair bit about him. It's actually when in a previous life in private equity, I was at a KKR Partners Conference. They have one every year where they bring in 400 or 500 of their LPs to a monster conference in California, and Henry Kravis always would have a guest speaker. And the last time I was there, it was Vance. His book had just come out, so he gave everybody books. We had like 500 books handed out, and it's an incredible story. It's
is that the Hillbilly Elegy? That one?
Yeah. Incredible read. I don't care what your political affiliation is. It's an American story that's just amazing. And then to see where he's come, and the fact that he was at the front of the line trashing Trump 7 years ago, and here he is now running with him. But but it's he is very crypto. He's much more in tune. Look at his age. He's 39. He's much more in tune with what's going on than anybody else in the race. So I think it'll be instructive to see what his position is as we start to get into more of the legal legislative ramifications of policies as opposed to being a fan.
Yeah. And just like, I think probably long term, like fundamentally, what if Trump and Vance do anything, it's to appease the crypto folks. It's like, get the SEC to promulgate some rules that define what crypto is and how you regulate it and how you register it and all that stuff, right? But long term, just the mere fact of having regulation, I don't think is necessarily like bullish for SKTLs or random. We're bullish for SKTLs for other reasons, but like the random crypto that's a scam is not going to do well just because the Vance puts in some regulations. No,
and you're hitting on the exact point, Bryce. I think what has to happen is we have to finish the regulatory framework.
Yeah.
And by doing that, eliminate the playing field out from under all the bad actors.
Exactly.
Because they're allowed to hang around. And until that happens, we will never have full acceptance of crypto by the investment community. Yeah. I'm talking about individual investors, which is really where the money lives.
Yeah.
It's not institutionally, frankly.
Yeah. That's a great point, Dan, that everyone thinks that regulation is pro crypto. And you're like, well, it might be for the legitimate ones, but for the 90% that are illegitimate, you're probably going to zero and people are going to be prosecuted. So
they don't want there to be regulations because they can't meet them.
No.
And so people should kind of say, okay, I think I missed the early days of crypto's pyramid play. Mm-hmm. So now this thing's going to start to act like something normal. It might get a little bit more boring.
Yeah.
But the trade is you're going to have all these people involved and getting in. You'll have a very liquid, frothy market as a result of that. That's
I think the more normal it gets and the bad actor cryptos start to go away, I think some of that money transitions out before it goes to zero, and it probably goes to Bitcoin and to Ethereum and some of those things. So I think that that's good for the legitimate crypto's future. You know, and there's always going to be the Mt. Goxes and the Germany selling. There's always going to be something out there that people are going to try to pinpoint to try and knock it down a little bit. But as more people are getting into the ETFs and holding, the liquidity will, especially for Bitcoin, it will dry up a little bit. I think there's over time, if you just hold, in my opinion, you're going to be rewarded. But
yeah,
it's over time things become less of a trading vehicle and more of a buy and hold long-term appreciation play. But you'll never burn the traders out of that market. I think just the fact that there being less options for them to play crazy, I think starts to bring the market to the middle for crypto, and that's where we need it.
And less options for malicious actors to run grifts on the unsuspecting great uncle that decides to put $500 in a crypto that he saw on TikTok.
Yeah, because if it's left unchecked, we're going to have a bunch of bodies and a lot of broken glass because of the sloppiness of policing these bottom feeder currencies, and then the stink gets on everything, and then it's all over crypto, period. And then it's I don't know if I should. I've heard bad things for 10 years in the public square. That's going to be the problem for crypto if this doesn't get cleaned up. So anybody in legitimate crypto should be hoping that this gets put to bed and the bad actors get flushed. Let them go to another country. But like everything else, investors will be attracted to North American money management because of the transparency and the rules and the regulations. There's a reason why everybody wants to come onshore to invest. There's a reason why we have all these offshore funds so that people can get access to North American investment management. That's why that market exists, because they can't invest in the U.S. otherwise. Everybody wants U.S. money management because they know it's the best, and it's also the most properly managed, structured, and regulated. So
cleanest shirt in the dirty laundry, as we often say.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
Well, back to Gary being our friend, per Cody. I wish he was here today because I did this just for him so he could go on another rant. But since he's not here, maybe I'll leave it up for next week as well. And maybe he'll remember.
Absolutely.
But yeah, when Gary starts not to be our friend and gets all the bad actors out, we'll see what happens. So he's everybody's friend right now because he's not doing anything. But.
Of course.
So one last note from me is that 3 weeks ago I looked at the total number of SKTL holders. So the number went up a little bit. So we're adding, there are new, in other words, buyers of SKTL. Just wanted to mention that.
That's great.
Well, maybe we should, no words mention that there's an Ethereum ETF coming out, but Dan, maybe in your spare time, you could start on the SKTLs ETF or application, and that really would help get our holders up.
The volume may or may not be there.
That's volume is always the issue. Liquidity, yes, it's highly illiquid. Well, I'll tell you, when the time comes, there's no shortage of ETF managers out there, and there's a lot of other asset managers that are still toying with launching ETFs.
Yeah,
every institutional money manager goes through a period of, God, should we go to the retail market? Should we create funds? Mutual funds. No, we don't want that. Well, there are enough of them that are going after that market, though, that are small asset managers. And there may be some asset managers who are going to say, there will be, that are going to say, hey, what are these emerging securities? Is there something I can buy? Maybe, let's look at SKTLs. I think at some point we start talking to those people and saying, hey, put us on your radar. That's all. Just put us on your radar.
Right.
as a way to promote it. Because the minute one of them picks you up when you have enough volume, then watch out, because here
Well,
comes the trading.
Yeah, and getting it out there to those kind of people, I think, would be helped by more talk about the actual problem in the industry. And I think we've talked about it a long time ago, but when are people actually going to start talking about it? It has to be financially beneficial for a company or companies to go after it. Until there's some sort of benefit for people other than destroying space. I mean, it's there. We need to be able to reward people for actually doing it, and not us personally, and not SKTLs necessarily. Partly, we can help, right? That's what we're here for. But governmentally, there needs to be more talk and more.
Well, NASA. This article I posted. NASA did this big thing on sustainability, space sustainability, and how are we going to make sure that we don't keep junking the place up, and what are we going to do about this and that. And I've been in conversations in the last week where we're talking about lunar communications plans, and we're going to just have the same mess around the moon pretty soon, because there are multiple companies planning to launch multiple constellations for lunar communications. There's going to be a ton of stuff in lunar orbit. Now, the good news is it'll all be new, or most of it will be brand new. But again, it's the same issue, and there's no atmosphere around the moon. So burning stuff up when they die is not an option. It's called a crash. So that's a big problem for lunar orbit. Is there's no natural disposal mechanism called an atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything there is going to have to be dealt with manually.
That's a grab and drag, right? Bring it back down somehow, and
that's
tear
where
it apart
we're going to
and
be
utilize the stuff to it.
That's where we're going to be doing the orbital manufacturing type stuff, because it's like, good, let's build that at the same time we put everything in orbit, so that as things break, and we just move them over here and get them chopped up and recycled. Same stuff that's going to be done in Earth orbit in the next couple of years.
Hey,
anyway,
one thing on that was news this last week. A Falcon 9 had a mishap with its second stage this last week, and some of the Starlink satellites didn't get to their intended orbit. It was the first time since like 2015 or 2017 that SpaceX has had any kind of a mishap with this Falcon. They went ahead and released those satellites, and then they were going to try to fire their boosters to push them up into the right orbit. But I haven't heard if that worked or not.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything either. Yeah. I mean, we had our antenna, which has been waiting for a launch for 2 years, actually launched a week and a half ago on Firefly with a total of 8 CubeSats on a CubeSat mission for NASA. 7 of them were deployed. 1 wasn't. Ours.
Oh no!
Seriously?
It looks like the door stuck. We didn't get a signal that it was released. We didn't get a signal that the door opened on the deployer. We didn't get none of that. And so we're sitting here going, what kind of bad luck is this?
Oh, man.
10 days later, we get, from the tracking outfit, GOM Space in the Netherlands was tracking as well over Europe. Oh, here's a data packet. It's talking.
Seriously? Great.
So in the last 3 days, we're going nuts. Like, okay, well, what the hell's going on with this thing? Where is it? Is it outside? Is it stuck inside? Is it half out? Did it get kicked out, but it got stuck and it's being dragged by the spacecraft? It says it's going around the Earth. So we're trying to find out what's going on, because then we can start the commissioning process, which triggers a 30-minute process that eventually would culminate in deploying the inflatable antenna. We have other antennas on there that are, like there's a whip antenna that's automatically the thing that's communicating, but there's a patch. We're going to try to take pictures with the patch antenna to see what's going on. So we're having some fun with it. The University of Arizona is upside down right now because our people are going back and forth. We're trying to get this thing to do its trick, albeit late. Power's low. So we got to be careful, because it was in a nasty spin all this time. And so you burn a lot of power trying to correct your spin, because you're firing and everything else. But we've got the spin stopped. So now we hope there's enough power to run this sequence, get the panels extended to grab some more sunlight and start powering it up. So we'll see. So
good
yeah,
luck with
things
that.
happen. Then if you look at the news release, Firefly says it was a successful launch. They launched 8 CubeSats to orbit. They didn't say we deployed 8 CubeSats because that wouldn't be a successful mission.
Yeah.
So we're giving them a little shit too. Because
Well, hopefully next week, Dan, you come back and you have an awesome report about how your satellite is
I will.
fully
I know
charged
we're
and
right over
working
time.
and communicating.
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah.
CatSat is its name for the Arizona Wildcats. It's called
All
CatSat.
right. Go CatSat. Cool.
All right, very cool.
All right. I've
Well,
got to jump. I have to jump.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, and we'll be back
Thank you,
here next
everybody.
week.
Be safe.
All right.
Have a great week.
Bye bye.
See you
Take
guys.
care.